Hello and welcome to the next episode of the SAP BTP Talks. So this is Niklas speaking here. For everyone which don't know me, my name is Niklas Siemer. I'm working at SAP and I'm a product manager for SAP Business Technology Platform. And today we're going to talk about the TCO report from GigaOM about SAP Build versus custom development projects. But before that, I have a little bit of small announcement in before, because this is a very special episode, not only because we have two exciting guests today, it's also a special episode because we have some changes for the podcast, because in the past, this podcast was called SAP BTP Talk. But in the future, we will rebrand starting with this episode to Unlocking SAP BTP. And another awesome news is that we also changed the format a little bit. So, if you're now listening to us on Spotify or Apple Music or any other streaming platform, you don't notice a difference, but we also changed to the video podcast format. So if you just want to listen on audio base, you can continue with that. But we are also now published on the official SAP main YouTube channel as a video podcast. So give it a try if you want. Yeah, and with that, I'm very happy to introduce my today's podcast guests. So on the one hand side, we have Howard Holton, which is the CTO of GigaOM, joining me in the interview today. And on the other side, we have a colleague of me of SAP, Mark Wright, the Senior Director for Product Marketing of SAP Build. Yeah, welcome to our podcast. Nice having you here today. So I would first ask you that you can introduce yourself, please. And let's start with you.
Sure. So I'm Howard Holton. I'm the CTO and COO over here at GigaOM. GigaOM is an industry analyst firm, much like another big industry analyst firm you may have heard of, whose name also starts with a G. We're just like them, but smaller and scrappy. I've been at GigaOM for 3 years. Before that, I was a CIO, a CTO, and a CISO for various companies like Hitachi Vantara and Rheem Manufacturing. I've been in the executive suite for about 18 years. Before that, I was an enterprise architect, an engineer, a sysadmin. I've been in IT for more than 35 years. I got started when I was 11. I wrote a piece of software called Plead Perfect back in those lovely WordPerfect days. Went on to sell that commercially. My dad closed his law office. We opened a computer consulting firm, and I kind of got addicted to working in the technology space. So I've been here ever since. It's been a long journey.
Yeah, thank you, Howard. So then we come to you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. So Mark Wright. So I'm our director in SAP Build marketing. So I've been in this position for about 3 years or going on 3 years or so. But I'm a long-term SAP employee. So I'm over about 20 plus years through different acquisitions, but served in a lot of different roles, from engineering to product management to pre-sales to customer success. So I've kind of filled a lot of different roles, really having kind of a passion for this application and development space, starting from the mobile days that I really concentrated on to where I'm at now. And really looking forward to this conversation. A little bit about myself, right? I'm based here in Boise, Idaho, which very few people in SAP are based out of, but love to spend my time outdoors with camping, soccer, etc. So,
sounds great. All right, thanks for introducing yourself. So Howard, let's continue with you. Can you please introduce GigaOM a little bit more detail to us?
Sure. Like I said, GigaOM's an industry analyst firm, like that other big G company. At GigaOM, we cover 6 major domains: storage, cybersecurity, data and AI, networking, cloud, and infrastructure, and then the people and process side kind of DevOps. But what really sets us apart is all of our analysts are active practitioners. We're engineers, architects, and developers in the field. We're not just talking about the work, but we're doing it, and we present it from the perspective of people that are actually running and using these tools. I don't employ full-time analysts. I use experts who stay close to the technology so we can bring a practitioner's view to the market, not an academic or journalistic one.
Okay, the next question goes to Mark then. Can you first introduce us on high level what is SAP Build and what is meant with the custom development as an alternative method instead of using SAP Build then?
Yeah, definitely. So just a little bit of introduction for everybody. SAP Build basically is SAP's development solution for extension, application, and automation. So what we've done is create a solution that uses AI-powered customization. It allows you to create these automations using pro-code or low-code development. And it works across SAP and non-SAP systems. So what we're doing is providing all these different development capabilities, regardless of your skill set. You're going to be able to take advantage of all of our innovations. You're going to be able to be more efficient with your development. And that's what we're here really to talk about today is how are you more efficient with SAP Build? And what we did was ask GigaOM to look at SAP Build against what we call a custom development stack. It could be something like a DIY stack or, as we said, custom development. Now, all platforms can do custom development, but the idea behind this was that customers or developers bring a whole variance of stacks to do development in a lot of scenarios. So you could take a look at a stack that has to do API creation or implement your security and authentication or, a development from a different Java script or anything like that has to come from all these different various environments. And then you have to mold it together. Now, from a build perspective, we run on a platform, right? So BTP or Business Technology Platform, as is the name of the podcast. And what that does is give the developers ability to take advantage of development model or security infrastructure and really get up and going. And what we asked them going to do was really compare build and how you can develop that against these common practice of movement platforms. So that's kind of where the paper took shape. And then the study began. So Howard definitely can go into how GigaOM approached that, though.
All right. Thanks for introducing that, Mark. So let's start fairly high level and simple before we get in more details. So Howard, in simple words, what is the report all about?
So the report is a test of the effectiveness of using SAP Build versus kind of the best off-the-shelf build your own stack, right? Like a typical stack that we would find in an enterprise versus SAP Build. And what we were really trying to look at is what is the difference for SAP customers building applications in their enterprise? It's a really important distinction because for 70 years, right, businesses have been telling SAP all about how their company runs. SAP Build's advantage is now we're leveraging that. Now SAP is leveraging that to help you better understand your business for the first time ever. And that kind of inside baseball that SAP is able to offer gives it a unique advantage that you just can't get with an off-the-shelf stack, right? So if you're an SAP customer, your data is in SAP, your ERP is SAP, and your stack is already a substantial portion of that SAP based. So there's some tribal knowledge in that ecosystem. And what SAP Build does is it leverages that tribal knowledge. And that's an advantage that nobody else has.
Exactly. So then let's get into the details. So how was the report set up? So what did you test it in detail? How it was tested? For what length of time, etc.?
So let's start with kind of how GigaOM does our tests, because we do it differently than any other analyst firm that I'm aware of. Matter of fact, the way GigaOM approaches the market is a big reason why I came to GigaOM. So we don't do customer surveys for testing. I don't call former customers and go, what's your experience? I don't do customer testimonials. I've been involved in those. And unfortunately, because you're relying on people's memory of a past event, they can be a little hand-wavy. No, what we do instead is I have a lab staffed by engineers, and we stand up all of these technologies, and we run them on predefined use cases that replicate things customers do in the real world. And so we test it as accurately as we can to replicate what an enterprise would do. And we're confident enough that all of our testing, all of the scenarios and everything, we host in a GitHub repository for each of our benchmarks. So anyone else can also run the same tests, right? There's no secret sauce. There's no magic. We really want to represent the real world. And so we took SAP Build, and then we set up kind of a DIY stack of the commonly used by developers to do this A/B comparison. We set up a sample SAP environment, and then we tested the time to develop common applications using SAP Build versus that development stack. What we found was, working with the SAP ecosystem, we were able to stand up the tools roughly 3 times faster and build the application and get the output 3 times as fast at a approximate 59% savings with SAP Build within the SAP ecosystem. And the really interesting thing was when we looked at the level of engineer required to get the results, with the SAP Build, we could use a lower level engineer almost across the board. I don't have the report in front of me because I think that would be cheating. I think we only had one case where we used a mid-level engineer on both the SAP Build and the DIY stack. Otherwise, across the board, it was always a lower level employee. And what that meant was you can really leverage all of the skills you have across the board in moving your SAP applications, these new applications, into production. And that's a tremendous advantage. None of us, not one organization, and again, I come from that executive corner, right? I've got to design an operational experienced team that's made up of senior people and junior people. And I don't know about how you've seen teams, but I generally have 3 to 5 times as many junior people as I do senior people, and I never have enough of any. And being able to really get more value from my junior developers was a huge advantage that we found. And it was a little surprising.
Yeah, thank you for introducing that and explaining that. So as we are talking about the TCO of development projects, what kind of development phases do we have in a project and what is their impact on the TCO?
Yeah, I mean, one thing, I want to add to Howard too. I mean, when we look at this, it was pretty interesting, right? They took a environment and then went away, right? So that's it kind of goes missing within the paper. SAP provided GigaOM. Here's SAP Build, and now go and do your thing, right? So this is real world, putting something in a customer's environment, and then they need to learn SAP Build and what its features are, and then come back with this report. So that helped really drive these efficiencies that Howard talked about. Also taking a look at what you can do with our AI stuff. But from a stack standpoint, right, and the TCO, we talk about developer skill sets, right? So it's a huge important thing that resonates in this paper where I looked at, we always hear about, yes, AI is coming with the vibe coding, et cetera. But today, customers are really struggling, or companies are really struggling to have developers that grow into senior developers. They're struggling to bring developers in-house, right? So you're getting minimal amount of support from your developers. So the nice thing about that was pointed out in this document is those roles that you talk about. What can you do with a junior developer as opposed to what you can do with a senior developer? And when you look at that 3 times developer efficiency, that's a big difference. Our junior developers or the junior developers can do a lot more with SAP Build than and then put senior developers on things like architecture and what are my main very important applications. So you see that kind of throughout the report, and it's very important to point out that we're driving efficiency through a lower seniority of a developer than the senior developers itself.
Absolutely. The more I can leverage my junior developers, the better it is for the entire organization. I'm going to get more code. I'm going to get better outcomes. I'm going to get faster outcomes. And here's the best part. Junior developers aren't just junior in their ability to develop complex applications, but they're also junior in their understanding of my business. Senior developers come along with a lot of tribal knowledge about how my company works and how my company runs and what we actually do, how we make money, how we produce products, all of those things. The less time my senior developers spend deep in the weeds of code, the more time they can spend really trying to understand, how do we move the business forward? How do we make advancements? What are the things that are working and not working within the business? And what are the big architectural rocks that need to be moved to be able to really advance things? So leveraging SAP Build with my junior team allows the senior team to really expose the value they have in the organization. And at the same time, because the junior team is able to contribute so much more, they're now getting up to speed that much more. And we spend less time talking about code and we spend more time talking about how the business works and how the business operates, really up-leveling the value of everyone in the entire software development team. And that was another kind of surprising thing. It's almost a tier 2 or ring 2 value that you get, a second order value that you get, that, when you go into it, you look at these things from the perspective of, okay, we want to be fast, we want to be efficient, we want to be effective, we want the code to work. But you don't really think about how does this change the value proposition that software development can have within the entire team. And that was a really valuable kind of second order advantage that we found in going through this process.
Yeah, sounds like a good approach to really have a real result in the end. So let's stick to that. So, what were the top 2 or 3 takeaways then from the report, Howard?
Yeah, so when you look at the GigaOM methodology, one of the things that we're really specific about, because again, I really want to replicate what is an enterprise going to encounter. We get no special access. Matter of fact, we do our best to establish like a Chinese firewall between us and the vendor's product team. So in this case, the SAP team. What we really tried to do was almost hamstring ourselves, almost handcuff us a little bit more even, to make sure that we're not getting special access. We don't have access to engineering teams. We don't have access to the product team, so that we can really show what is this like to use as an enterprise customer. And the valuable part was, at no point did my team get frustrated. At no point did my engineers throw up their hands. Matter of fact, we ended up having a lot of infighting amongst the engineering team, because the ones that were working on this project were having so much fun working with the tool. Everybody wanted to work with the tool. And I've had a few calls going, hey, are we going to do more testing for these guys? And can I get in on it?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Howard, for this small deep dive on that. Mark, anything to add?
Yeah. From us, of course, right? So the 3 times developer efficiency is a huge number from an SAP perspective, right? And not kind of selling SAP Build, but there's not a tool within the SAP ecosystem and outside of the SAP ecosystem that drives such developer efficiency. And as Howard was talking about, this gives you that TCO reduction. It gives you a better ROI. It's a solution that developers can get their hands on and get up and running quickly because of the way that it's developed with visual tools and AI capabilities and, the integration into the SAP ecosystem. Now, one of the things too, coming back to kind of the AI topic. So Howard touched on this, vibe coding and really these models that are getting generated. Yes, there's a lot of AI out there, right? So you can look at the specialties that AI is creating, like in Claude, you might be able to do a lot of stuff that a ChatGPT can do, or even Google and Meta. So there's a lot of AI capabilities, but what makes the increase in boost for AI special within Joule and SAP is really that integration into our business data, right? So we've created LM models that know SAP. It's trained off of SAP code, and that's where that boost comes from. You really have to look at the benefits that an LM model gives you in order to get that boost in productivity from an AI, and only Joule can offer that from an SAP perspective. Of course, we can use other factors of ChatGPT or Copilot or OpenAI. All that stuff comes into that development approach, but Joule gives you that special integration into SAP systems.
Sure. So remember, I come at this from the executive perspective, right? My job is to run the business of building applications inside the enterprise. So the important thing to understand is I pay my developers to be fast. I don't care what you say. You can never get time back. I can always get more money. I can always hire more people. I can always replace a tech stack. Sure, all of that is costly. It's not free, but I can never get time back. So the most valuable thing that I have is time. And really, when I'm thinking about time, it's time to value, right? Time to value is how quickly from start do I get an outcome? How quickly from when I start do I see a result that I can start to measure and determine, is this good? Is this bad? Are we headed in the right direction? Or are we headed in the wrong direction? Time to value is the reason under Agile we have things like MVPs. It's the reason we all switch to an agile process. So the faster I can see value, the faster I can validate that I'm headed in the right direction. And the faster my users will validate that I'm hitting the target, right? So when we ask the question, are we doing the right thing with SAP Build and the SAP ecosystem, what we found was nothing else came close to the time to value within that ecosystem. We started to see results very, very quickly, and we were able to immediately leverage those results. And again, we have no specific, like I'm not an SAP customer. We have no specific experience in the SAP ecosystem, right? I didn't go out and hire a bunch of SAP engineers. That would defeat the purpose, right? So since we didn't have SAP experts in our ecosystem, and yet we're still able to get those results and still able to get a 3x improvement of 59% cost savings. We really felt like that represented a real good view of the market and of the space, because we're not setting ourselves up for any more success than any enterprise. We really want to be trustworthy, and we really want SAP to be trustworthy when they talk about these things and when they show them, right? So again, 2.8 times faster with a huge 59% reduction in the level of effort. And again, right, we were really shocked by what we saw. We were really shocked by the value that we got. And it was really a fun project to work on. I can't stress that enough. So much of the stuff that we do day to day is just like at some point you're like, oh man, another tool. Oh man, another whatever. And to have my engineering team come back and these are high pressure. We try to do them very quick. We try to work through them, right? We're really trying to replicate the pressure that you would have in an enterprise. And kind of almost set ourselves up for failure so that it represents things well, and to have the team come back and go, that was so much fun. Can we really do more of those? It was fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for your addition there. I mean, we will touch on a little bit of more details and capabilities, what Build offers. But as we already are more or less on halftime of our interview in our podcast, we have a small power break game to refresh our minds, and I believe the minds of our listeners as well, because they hear us talking. So, let's play a small game. The game is fairly easy. So I just give you a question like coffee or energy drink, and you just simply tell us your choice. And if you want, you can also touch slightly on why it's your choice. All right. So then we always start with Howard then. So first question is then, do you prefer walking in a calming forest or making a hike in a calming forest? Or are you more the urban guy exploring cities?
So I grew up in rural. I grew up in the mountains. I really find the forest and nature to be comforting. But I travel 250 days a year. So I find that by sheer necessity of time, I spend a lot more time in the city. I had a motorcycle accident several years ago. So like I don't walk as well as I used to either. So hiking has become kind of a challenge. The bummer is, we invest so little in infrastructure that some cities, the sidewalks are worse than hiking in the mountains. It's quite terrible. But generally I spend most of my time in the city now. It's unfortunate.
Okay, got it. Yeah. What about you, Mark?
So 100% walking in the forest. I live where I live because I can be outdoors. I do a lot of hiking, a lot of camping. So forest is kind of my space to get away from the urban landscapes. And I do it quite often, right? So I love the hiking in the forest and kind of the relaxation that you get from it.
Awesome. So then we have the second question. I hope this is a little bit more easier than salad or fries.
Oh, I'm a big salad guy. Salad's one of my favorite foods. I mean, it's a little bit of a cheat because French fries are always kind of French fries, but salads have kind of infinite variability. A couple years ago, I went to a restaurant and I saw something neat on the menu and I just went, I kind of got to try it. I've never even heard of it. It seems kind of weird. I tried it and I absolutely fell in love. And it was like a watermelon and feta and balsamic salad. Oh, it was so good. So then, of course, I learned how to make it at home, and it's become one of our favorite, like, late summer dishes. It's super light. It's super flavorful. You chop up the watermelon, you stick it in the fridge, you get it nice and cold. A little bit of feta, a little bit of cheese. My wife likes it with, like, sliced almonds or sliced macadamia nuts, and it's so refreshing. But the fact is, that's a salad. French fries are always French fries. You know what I mean? Like, even tater tots, technically not French fries. So, I'm happy to eat a crispy, fluffy French fry, but I just don't think you can beat a good salad.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective I never thought of. Yeah. What about you, Mark?
Well, I think living in Idaho, I was supposed to say fries because we have potatoes, right? But that's a lot of variety of fries. But yeah, I love the answer that Howard gave. And then, of course, my wife would prefer me to say salad, right? A little bit healthier. But probably fries would be my go-to.
Yeah. Okay. And then we have the last question. Do you prefer classical music or more modern music? And if you want, you can also share your type of favorite music if you want.
So I'm a kid from the 90s. Like, alternative rock is absolutely my jam, and I grew up heavy on classic rock. So, like, when I'm sitting with some headphones on and I'm just kind of unwinding from the end of the day, I'm like Pink Floyd, give me some Led Zeppelin. I'm a big fan of rock. I mean, I just realized in going through this, I'm heavy into nerd rock. Right? But when I want to concentrate, when I'm working, I'm a big fan of like jazz. Jazz is probably my favorite, and specifically like Miles Davis, Coltrane, versus the kind of bigger band stuff. Right? I like simple band members, complex music. I don't know why that helps me concentrate because it doesn't seem like it would. It's so discordant sometimes, but that really works for me. It's kind of hard to beat a good Chopin though. So I guess I'm a little bit all over the map is what I'm saying, but yeah, definitely nerd rock. It's weird.
No, jazz. Interesting. Yeah, thanks.
I'm a mixed bag. I don't really have a favorite. I guess I would go with like classic rock is the most often music that I listen to, but lots of different mixed music in my Spotify.
Yeah, I know this feeling as well. All right, so that was already the game. So thank you for playing with me. So we can get back to the topic then. And I mean, I know that in the report and also in the use case, which was below the report, you've used the CAP framework from SAP, and you also utilized Joule within Build. But for those who don't know Joule and CAP, so what is it and why is it so fundamentally important in transforming the development process?
Yeah, I can give an introduction. Obviously, those are two SAP technologies, and then Howard probably can talk about how they kind of take advantage of it. But from a Joule standpoint, right, it's SAP's AI assistant. So it's really what you would consider a co-pilot for lots of different things. What we always say from an SAP perspective, it's grounded in business data. It's infused in your AI agents across all of the business, right? So from a developer standpoint, I kind of talked about this a little bit more before. Joule itself, we've integrated it into all of our development of the business. So we're giving you the capabilities to do generative AI. We're giving you the capabilities to create AI agents, moving into autonomous AI. So there's a lot of innovation there. The biggest factor from a Joule perspective, again, is our proprietary LLMs that we build in order to make it efficient for SAP development. And then we integrate with other, Microsoft Copilot can take advantage. And I kind of mentioned that. But again, Joule itself from a developer standpoint is efficient because of the LLM models we've both done from CAP and ABAP in order to best create a development environment. Now, I say CAP a lot, and this is a main foundation of the paper itself. It's our cloud application programming model. It is the foundation. So CAP itself is defined as a framework of languages. It has libraries, tools, development solutions. It can create services. So there's a lot of things that it's kind of the glue. It's a far too simple of a solution, but it alleviates those pains that's traditionally associated with your development of enterprise applications, right? We talked about how you gain efficiency, and CAP is one of those ways. It's really giving developers this best practice path to be able to create these enterprise grade solutions like we saw in the paper. So we combine Joule with CAP, and we have this whole solution that helps you kind of transform how you develop within an SAP ecosystem that's really delivering that solution to create these enterprise grade applications. And again, coming back to the TCO, CAP and Joule combined, and the rest of the framework is where you get the TCO from.
Got it. So I'm now curious for the perspective of you, Howard.
like when we looked at what did CAP and Joule really offer, there were a few things that were really surprising. I've already touched on the different experience level of the developers being able to be leveraged. One of the things that I really didn't expect, and those that are involved in software development are going to recognize this one right away, producing synthetic data is an art unto itself. And one of the things that we found, because SAP knows SAP so incredibly well, it was so fast and effective at generating synthetic data. It was a tremendous time saver. And that's a really important feature when you're looking at governance and compliance and how you govern your data and manage your data. We really want to make sure that we're able to generate synthetic data that looks like us, but isn't us. The risk to using our real data in testing is we can easily violate GDPR. Simply because we're in the midst of the development process and we don't really have the controls in place as part of that. So you need good synthetic data that really looks like you. And I was really shocked at how good SAP CAP and Joule were at generating that synthetic data, right? The other thing that was a little bit shocking was just how far it extended the value and how little we had to go back and kind of think about it from a different perspective. Like by default, we start thinking about these tools through the lens of how junior can I be? And what we really didn't have to do was go, you know what? I'm just too junior for this. I really need to call in someone else. I really need more experience. We were really shocked at how little we had to kind of up level our developmental experience in order to make these tools work. It was really fantastic. And I think customers are really going to be shocked by how fast they're going to be in, how fast they're going to see results, and how good those results are going to be because of how much SAP knows about your business and how much of that is integrated within the tool set.
I mean, you already both touched a little bit on that you don't need too serious developers. I mean, that you can have junior developers in the project as well and then getting the results. But yeah, I mean, what is or how SAP Build serve as a differentiator for the developers, enabling them to meet and exceed their goals? So, Howard, what do you think?
So what developers want to do is they really want to write code. They want to muck with systems, right? And the number one place you muck with systems in expansive integrations within your company is building integrations. So even if you just think about, I need to access our primary data set, cool, that's an ERP. There's probably 60 other places that you need to access. Using a traditional development tool, you're going to spend a ton of time building all of these integrations, and it's going to effectively take away from the thing developers get joy in, which is building applications and creating these interesting outcomes. And because all of that is integrated, and because Joule speaks SAP, because Joule speaks ERP, because it speaks HANA, you don't have to build any of those integrations. They're kind of right out of the box. And so you're immediately putting developers in the position where they're doing the thing they enjoy the most and spending a lot less time on the things they don't enjoy. And I think that really goes back to the thing I said about my developers really enjoying the experience and really having a good time, because they really didn't have to spend a lot of time as plumbers. They really got to spend a lot of time as painters. And everybody prefers to be a painter.
Maybe I'll add to what Howard was saying. I love the statement that the developers loved what they were doing with SAP Build. It makes it a lot easier, right? You keep your developers happy, and a lot of that coming back to CAP, right? I mean, a lot of the speed, the efficiency, the integration that you get is based off of CAP, and we built SAP Build on top of the CAP framework, the CAP development model, in order to differentiate, right? This comes back to that whole custom stack discussion, because what you have with the custom stack is you've got to bring in service integration, you've got to bring in identity authentication, you've got to bring in a platform to run and operate, right, from your maintainability and upgrade standpoint. All this is kind of built into SAP Build to make the developers more efficient and enjoy the development itself, because they can easily do the integration to a backend system. They can easily create a service. They can create their data models. They can integrate AI into creating that sample data and unit tests and code generation. And it comes back as that full efficiency, right? It's a safe development environment that allows the speed of development to do it without a negative effect, right? Which is often the case. You don't want to have code that you have to come back to and continue to reiterate on. SAP Build is creating that platform for developers to be able to take advantage of all these integration and tools and frameworks that is underneath the scenes.
So Howard, I have another question for you. So, I mean, we heard about the benefits of using Build, that you get faster, leveraging AI and so on and so forth. But what do you think are the potential business risks of not taking advantage of low-code tools, Gen AI, and so on and so forth?
So I think we need to look back to the last time we had a change like this in business. And I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say, think about this much like looking back on the Industrial Revolution, right? The Industrial Revolution added machines to every single thing that we did, right? So let's say you make clothes, and on Friday, your competition went home and they wiped out the floor and they replaced the floor with automated machines. And all of a sudden, your looms were automated and you had sewing machines. Your competition did that, right? Your job is to produce clothes for the working person, for regular people that need to go to work. Machines are going to do that 5, 10, 20 times faster. And the beautiful part is they're also going to do it reliably. The stitch is always the same distance from the last stitch. Right? And so your consistency is improved. We could argue all day long about whether that's better quality or not. But the fact is, it's also cheaper for them to produce. So now all of a sudden they have a competitive advantage. Well, that's where we are today. If you have to have a mix of, let's say, 30 junior developers, 20 mid-level developers, and 50 senior developers to make your stack work, you have top-loaded yourself in a way that's just going to cost you. How do you keep onboarding senior developers at that rate? How do you keep promoting people and make sure that you have them? Well, you're not doing it just internally. So you're constantly relying on some source to continue to add there. Well, so is everyone else. By adopting these tools and by shifting that paradigm, you're faster, you're more efficient, and you're providing a long-term path for developers through the entire cycle. It is always cheaper to promote from within when you have the technical capability. And one of the advantages that's not immediately apparent in all of this is because your junior developers are more effective, they feel like they're more valuable, and they actually are more valuable, right? So their morale is improved, plus their value is improved. Also, they can start spending more time understanding what your users are trying to do, what the business is trying to do, and how the business works. So you're also, while you're allowing them to contribute to code at a rate that was simply not possible before, you're also allowing them to build that tribal knowledge that has tremendous value. Tribal knowledge builds loyalty. People feel comfortable. They start to feel like they have a home, and your ability to now promote and grow from within drastically increases. And because you don't need them to be experts at absolutely everything, you can also now focus on, cool, I have 3 developers that actually understand how networking works. Good. That's how they're going to be senior developers, right? We're going to start getting away from these kind of jack of all trades, and we're going to allow people to specialize more in the things that they want to be good at, because AI will make them a jack of all trades, right? I was at Git last year. And I think they really missed an opportunity because what they were basically saying was everyone's a developer. No, everybody's not going to be a developer, right? What they missed was if today you're a database developer, if today you're a React developer, if today you're a back-end or front-end or whatever kind of developer you are, tomorrow with AI, you will be a full-stack developer. And you won't have to change and you won't have to move away from the thing that you like. And the deep knowledge that really gets all of us excited about working in tech. Right? We're all kind of nerds in our own way. And nerds really like to dig into things. We like to do the thing we like, and we don't like to do the thing we don't like. Well, AI's advantage is not in doing the thing that you like. AI's advantage is in doing the thing you don't like. Right? So we all want well-rounded employees. And if you don't start taking advantage of this today, and if you don't make this part of your company lexicon, a part of your company culture, and really make it so that your people are comfortable in using these tools, you're going to be left behind. You're going to lose the greatest technical advantage that you could possibly have because you can't move fast enough. And I will say most companies that aren't moving, they're not moving for exactly the wrong reasons. They're not moving because they can't figure out the bureaucracy, because they can't figure out how to overcome the fear, right? Start with things that are low risk. Low risk is defined by the data you put in, not anything else. Put in low risk data and you will get massive returns.
Yeah, I totally agree with all the points you've shared, Howard. All right, so then we all know, we're three in the round, so both is not suitable there. But anyways, we know that customers can easily extend and integrate SAP systems and also non-SAP systems to build applications. So, but what if the customers have a very complex mix of systems? So a lot of SAP systems, cloud, on-premise, a lot of third-party solutions. So how does SAP Build enable these companies to integrate both SAP and non-SAP solutions easily in the process and in the development phase?
Yeah, and I can talk about that a little bit. From an SAP Build standpoint, again, we're running on the BTP stack. One of the biggest services in BTP is our integration suite. Now, integration suite allows you to integrate to thousands of APIs. It has hundreds of these cloud connectors that open you up to connecting to Adobe, Microsoft, ServiceNow, government resources. So there's all this integration stack that we have that is inherent to SAP Build. So anything that you put into SAP Build, we can create services on top of. So if we have direct connections into those backends, or if we need to develop our own OData services or RESTful services, and we can do that. And that's the thing about SAP Build, is that we're not just developing for SAP. We're developing for these heterogeneous environments. One of the things that we announced with SAP is BDC, right? And one of the things that they like to talk about is harmonized data. Harmonized data means we're pulling it from these Adobe systems or these ServiceNows or Salesforce and actually putting it into the hands of our developers. And SAP Build specializes at that, right? Who cares what the back end is? Let me create these visualizations. Let me create these applications that are based off of multiple different systems. And integration suite and the back end connectors that SAP Build has allows our customers to be able to do that, where the end user has no idea. They don't care what the back end is. They just want nice data. They want insight into their applications. And that's where we can kind of see SAP Build growing towards.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for touching on that. So, Howard, let's come back to you then. We want to be 100% transparent in this podcast as well. And you also have some risks identified and shared in the paper. So can you please touch on them?
So when we look at risks of using Joule, one of the things that you really want to pay attention to is the risks have not changed. Almost all of the risks are directly related to your data quality, the specific governance requirements for the data, and your ability to properly test. And these are things where software development teams have had struggles forever. It's not really changing. However, the velocity to which you produce applications is going to drastically increase. So it is going to exacerbate any of those issues that you have. So you really do want to pay attention, especially early in the process. Before I even started with Build, what I would do is I would look at what are the data sets that we have that contain the least amount of risk, and how can I define those? And then I would also look at what are the tests we're going to use to not only validate that the application works, but what are the tests we're going to use to validate that the data we get back is de-risked. That's such a clunky thing to say, but we really want to pay attention to those, right? So there's no additional risk that I see that SAP has that other kind of Gen AI vibe coding tools don't already have. They're all there, but as velocity increases, so does every risk you have from poor process, from poor policy, and from poor procedure. So you really want to say, okay, if we're going to speed up the time it takes for us to get results, let's invest some of that time into fixing the pre and post things that maybe we were taking a little shortcut in, so that we could maintain a velocity that was acceptable, right? Maybe we don't give all of that 59%. Maybe we don't give all of that 3x performance improvement back to the business directly and start by producing more code. Maybe initially we take some of that performance improvement, right? Maybe we give back a 40% improvement in speed, and we take the 2.6 left over, or 1.6 left over, sorry, and we invest that into really making sure that our policies and procedures are good, that we really give people the time necessary to architect on the front end and to test on the back end. Because the better we are at those things, the better this whole thing is going to be, and the more production ready our code is going to be when we first turn it over to our users. And we really want to make sure we're on top of that. We do not want to accelerate making mistakes when it comes to data and data access.
All right. Anything else to add from your side, Mark?
Not so much. I mean, I know the paper touched on, community support, right? SAP has an SAP community, but it may not have as large of a community outside of, sitting on Stack Overflow or Reddit. And, we continue to, are aware of that, right? So, I know some of the developers in GigaOM kind of pointed that out, where you more are, learning from your internal resources and the SAP resources instead of a larger community. And we continue to grow that community to help refine that. But that was one of the things I know that was pointed out in the paper that you have to be aware of, right? I mean, because you go to an open source type solution, and there's going to be a bigger community to support you from an external perspective. But SAP looks at it from an SAP partner kind of support network.
All right. Yeah. So then I have one further question for you, Mark. So, I mean, I know the report touched on using Build in combination with the CAP model, but we also have ABAP Cloud as part of Build as an offering, right? So what's your opinion on using Joule in combination with ABAP Cloud? Because it's, quite new, I would say. Yeah.
No, it's a great question. It's, of course, a very hot topic inside of SAP. The report didn't use ABAP, but of course, if you're connecting to an S4 backend, ABAP is natively there, right? So ABAP itself, for anybody that doesn't know, it's a 50-year-old tool or development language, right? We are built on top of ABAP. So that means a ton of our companies, or a ton of the customers out there, they're all running on ABAP. So it's a very special development stack. And when we look at it, it goes back to Howard talking about, you have to get developers up to speed. You have to have junior developers that can look at existing code, or what you would maybe call legacy code, and be able to understand it. And a lot of times that's difficult, right? But what we did with the ABAP AI piece inside of Build is we trained the LM model on about 3.5 million lines of code inside of SAP, because we have all that code to train it off of. So the nice thing about Joule and ABAP is now a junior developer can come in and it can do code explanation. What is this code actually doing? Because I don't know ABAP. And how do I make it more efficient from legacy ABAP into ABAP Cloud? And how do I migrate into what we call clean core? So the LMMs that we built for ABAP Cloud are a very special trained LMM. And now you're going to see more developers be able to take advantage of ABAP and also know how to migrate or take advantage of CAP and develop in JavaScript. So we're kind of merging the two worlds so that developers of today and developers of ABAP have these trained models. And you'll see more advances in the ABAP LLM, where we're doing full code migration, or being able to help take from on-premise to cloud. So it's exciting to see, but we get a lot of feedback. Of course, I'm biased, but I think it's amazing. I think it's great to be able to take ABAP into the next generation, right?
Yeah, I wish this code explanation has been existing in the past already, but I think it's awesome as well. All right, so Howard, anything else you want to mention, pointing out from the report before we come into our closing question?
Yes. The final thing I want to talk about in the report is GigaOM really did the best we could do to really present this as objectively as possible. However, I encourage you to make your own decision. I encourage you read the report as one of many pieces of information, not the only piece of information. Look, I'd love if we were the absolute authority in the world on everything. I haven't figured out how to be that yet, right? I'm not confident enough in myself and my own skills. Me and my team are spending a tremendous amount of time learning every week. So please use the report. If you have any questions about it, if you have any complaints, if you want to kind of dig in, feel free to shoot me an email. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. It's a great way to find me. I'm there all the time. I'd love to hear your feedback.
Yeah, thanks for these words. So with that, we come to the end of our podcast. At the end, we usually ask our guests for any kind of final recommendation. It can be a book, it can be a movie, it can be a series, it can be work-related, or just something you enjoy in your private time. So Howard, what about you? What do you want to recommend to our listeners then?
Sure. So that's a great question. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Sure. That's a great question. Soft skills are really hard to add, and we spend a ton of time like learning how to be managers, which is filling out forms and moving them through the business. We don't spend a lot of time learning how to be leaders, and being a leader is so incredibly important. I was lucky enough to take a management course from 2020 to like 2024, and I highly recommend it to everyone. And it's almost completely free. It's highly available. It's really entertaining. It's on Apple TV. It's called Ted Lasso. If you haven't watched Ted Lasso, it's supposed to be this kind of fish out of water comedy about an American who's never played soccer and goes to be the head coach of a premier football league in the UK. And he is an enormous fish out of water. And you would expect it to kind of be great. He's going to be the butt of all the jokes. It is not that show at all. It is hands down, and I am not making a joke, the best leadership course I have ever seen in my life. It's 3 seasons. It's a ton of fun. I highly recommend it. It's full of laughs, but it's also got this really deep kind of leadership, how to be a leader, how to pull the best out of people. It's got this wonderful subtext that I really wish more shows had.
Okay, I need to check that out because I have Apple TV Plus, but I never use it. So that's a good idea then. What about you, Mark?
No, that's an awesome recommendation. I'm a big soccer fan. I just saw, PSG Inter Milan is going to the Champions League. So, that kind of relates to Ted Lasso, but love the reference. From my standpoint, a little bit more serious, we're really trying to look at how you do use data in your day-to-day life. So, a recommendation, as you move forward in your career is really how do you associate data with your day-to-day jobs, right? Taking a look at, podcasts that are out there that really can provide you insight into what you're doing. But again, I like the Ted Lasso. So I'm going to go and make sure to renew my Apple TV for season 4.
All right. So thank you for sharing then. And of course, also thank you for joining me in today's episode and today's interview. So really appreciate that you're taking the time. If you're brand new to the podcast because you just discovered it in the new format, check out our old episodes. Of course, final recommendation, check out the report from GigaOM. It's also linked in the show notes. And as well, if you want to make yourself familiarized with SAP Build, make sure to check out one of the learning journeys around SAP Build then. Yeah, and with that, as said, my name is Niklas, product manager for SAP BDP, recording live from the headquarters in Waldorf. And see you in one of the next episodes then. Bye-bye.